Hello, it's me again, the snarky juror who doesn't know how to do tech. I just recorded the whole afternoon with just me. None of the court. So this is actually take two. This is the afternoon of the day 2 jury trial, New Mexico versus Alec Baldwin, in the accidental death of Helena Hutchins. We're just, yes, baby. Okay, there you are. We're going to go ahead and start this up again. I'm going to keep myself out of it and mute myself. So let's hope I remember to unmute myself when I come back. But let's go ahead and get in there and let you see what's going on. See, I didn't do it. No, not you. This one. Right. They OJP motions. I have no idea what OJP stands for, but they are going to go through a bunch of stuff. They had to go get Mr. Baldwin because he had left for various reasons. And they said, no, he has to be here. So he wasn't pleased.
This dialogue here that takes place between pages 2 and 5. You have heard the defense attorneys on appropriate questioning of the witnesses, and also during opening statements talk about how upset Mr. Baldwin was, that he was upset, that he was panicked, that he was ashen. He was even ashen in color. What pages 2 through 5 demonstrate, and I want to tell you, let me make one correction. Sure.
The highlighted is the portion that you want redacted.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I only see, oh, got the wrong one in front of me. Okay, all right, sorry, I transposed them. Okay, go ahead.
Let me find this part. Hang on just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I to help make my point, if we go down to the last paragraph of page 4, you'll see where Mr. Baldwin is speaking to someone on the phone, and he says, and just spend the time here, and they're going to do what they've got to deal with. He's talking about, I think, investigators and also insurance investigators, and deal with what they've got to deal with. And we shouldn't let, we'll go have, it'll work, and we'll go. And I believe what he says, and I can play it if you need me to, because you can actually hear it on the audio, even though the transcript says indiscernible. We'll go have a good time. So these are not, at this point in time when Mr. Baldwin is making this statement, he is at the police station. He does not know that Ms. Hutchins has passed, but he knows that she's been critically injured, and she's so injured that she's been taken away in a helicopter. And if the defense hasn't spent all of this time saying how panicked and upset he was, I'm not sure that it would be relevant, but he is actually planning basically a vacation, and he tells his family, still come to New Mexico, we'll have a good time. So this is obviously information that directly contradicts what the defense has argued. And if it would help the court to see his demeanor and hear what he actually says, his family was coming to New Mexico the following day because he had a bit part for his daughter in the movie. So his wife and all of his children were coming the following day, and he is telling at one point, I think he's speaking to his wife, and he has her on FaceTime so we can actually hear her. We can hear her responses. And then he's speaking to another person who sounds like some sort of a family assistant or a nanny or someone like that. And he is explaining that he wants that person to try to convince his wife to still come to New Mexico because they can't get their money back for the plane tickets, and they'd like to go ahead and have a good time.
Where's the thing about the plane tickets? How do you do that?
So here's where he says it. There's a part here where he says they're not going to give us our money back.
Oh, yeah, that's, okay.
That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
So
So are you talking about lines 19 through 25 on page 4? You object to the redaction on? Just this portion.
on what page, I'm sorry?
Well, you said 2 to 5, and then you
Yeah,
pointed out
So
a particular portion
So-
within 2 to 5.
overall, my position is this is the defendant's statement and it comes in. And I don't see a reason that it stays out. And the reason specifically that a lot of this conversation comes in is because of the defense statements about his state of mind, and this directly contradicts those.
All right, you're gonna come back up here.
Yes, sir.
No?
Do you want me to say?
Yeah, I want you to go over there.
Can I leave these here? Okay.
So, Your Honor, first, what we have within this section that we're going to be discussing right now is we have also some additional hearsay. So we're looking at not only Mr. Baldwin's statements, but it also includes statements from the female speaker who would be his wife. And then you see female speaker 1, there's also female speaker 2. So there's additional hearsay aside from, again, the statements that we're talking about with respect to Mr. Baldwin. In addition, when we're looking at whether or not this is admissible, the court has to engage in a balancing test as to what the probative value actually is. The court has already indicated and ruled, in fact, at the motions in limine, that Mr. Baldwin's demeanor, even leading up to the accident, was not going to be coming in because the court engaged in that balancing test and said, for example, anything regarding him exhibiting poor behavior. Understood, Your Honor. And so I have actually the court's ruling here, so I'll be more specific. So what it says is that any of the videos or any evidence or pictures which relate to Mr. Baldwin not handling or that goes to the defendant's gun that worked or didn't work, and they're showing that it did work because he's shooting. There's videos showing that he's cocking the gun, and it says that those would come in. However, everything else regarding him yelling at the crew or telling people to hurry up, none of that is relevant, and that is propensity evidence.
And that dealt with what was offered, okay?
That is correct.
Was not offered. This was not even discussed at that time. So this
Correct.
is fresh to the court.
Absolutely, Your Honor. So what we're doing is we're looking at what the court had previously ruled, and then we're using that also to inform the arguments that we're making at this time. And so certainly when we're talking about state of mind for after the fact, that becomes even less relevant than state of mind or actions that were happening leading up to the accident. So when we're looking at what this is actually probative of, the state is saying it's probative of that he's, talking about he's going to go have a good time. He's really not that distraught about it. But if we look again at what is Mr. Baldwin's state of mind after this has happened, what element does that go to within the proof that the state has to demonstrate in order to meet the elements to demonstrate that he's actually guilty of involuntary manslaughter? And the answer is that none of this here is probative of any effect of consequence to any of the elements of the crime that he's charged with. So when the court is engaging in this balancing test, we have to look to see what is the probative value, and there's none or very minimal. But the danger of unfair prejudice is substantial, and it substantially outweighs any probative value in that, again, he's talking about his family, he's talking about plans that they have, and there's danger that the jury will misinterpret that or misuse that to view him as being callous or that he doesn't care about Ms. Hutchins, when actually that's not accurate. So we are asking that the court exclude this section that we're referring to. In addition, Your Honor, let me go over to page 5. If the court will look at the top of page 5, here again, this is just more, them trying to make him look callous. He's worried about, at the top, he's talking about staying away from
Just look
people.
over your shoulder.
Yes, of course. Mhm. Oh, do you want? Okay.
I just want it because mine's under yours, so I can't
Understood.
see where you are. Okay.
So, Your Honor, so what we're talking about here up at the top of the page is, again, he's worried about being photographed. He does live a very public life, and this is a very, difficult, sensitive time just in general for everyone. And the references to the media here, again, could be taken as something callous or something of that sort. And so, he's talking about, this is breaking news, this is media, and he's trying to keep his family away from that as well. So it's misleading, and when we engage in a 403 balancing test, this should not come in.
Normally, I would agree, but for the fact that the defense actually made his demeanor after the fact relevant. So now that they've made it relevant, it's relevant. And it goes both ways.
All right, thank you. The court makes the following ruling. Under 11-401, it says it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence and the factors of consequence in determining the action. It is not only the issue of whether he committed the crime of involuntary manslaughter, it's also a relevant fact. And you all made that fact very important through Officer LaFleur yesterday. So I do find that it's relevant to to basically respond to you all talking about how upset Mr. Baldwin was, and certainly that you considered that fact of consequence, and I'm deciding that this rebuttal information is of consequence. I also find that its probative value is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice and all the other choices that are under 11403. I will say that I think that I'm not going to let everything in. I'm going to focus on page 4, and I'll start with line 16 and on page 4, and I will go to page 5.
And I'm sorry, is this what's coming in or what's staying out?
No, it's coming in.
Okay.
The rest of the yellow is staying out.
Can you repeat that line?
Just a
again?
minute, I'm reading
Okay,
page 5.
sorry.
Okay, so it's line 16, starting with Alec Baldwin, finishes the rest of the page 4, starts on page 5 at the top, and finishes on line 10. The rest of the yellow will be redacted.
Understood. Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
The next one I show, and Ms. LeBlanc, just correct me if I'm wrong, is on page 12. So this issue goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's state of mind, and I'm looking, Your Honor, I'm sorry, at basically 12 through 14. He understands that whether there's a live round on set or not, these guns can be dangerous, and he says it right here between 12 and 14. What he's talking about with the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. That's him talking about his knowledge of the danger of these guns. That goes directly to the heart of the state's case. As the court knows, the state doesn't disagree with 15 through 17. And again, when we start here on 18, where Mr. Baldwin says, I'm told, that again goes directly to his knowledge of the injuries that can occur if these guns are not handled with safety. He says right there, I'm told even with the flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed and die. And you know what? We can take out this part here that says which both of them died, because that is relevant to the Brandon Lee, John Eric Hexum that we agreed to remove. So I don't oppose taking out both of them died, but this goes directly to the heart of the state's case. And then I think it's 21 through 25 we've agreed to redact. Obviously, this part here on the top of page 13 is very important to the state because Mr. Baldwin says, my point is I've been doing this. I shot enough guns in my day in movies. I've never seen this before where a flash round was. Obviously, what I'm trying to get in is he's got experience with firearms, and he talks to Detective Hancock pretty extensively about that. So his personal experience with firearms on movie sets and off movie sets is all absolutely relevant. You want me to stop there?
Yeah.
Here, let's do this. Let me just... There you go.
Even though it doesn't matter, I agree totally. Because he never handled that weapon as a weapon. He was waving it around, pointing it at people. He knew better, but he didn't care because he's Alec Baldwin, you know.
So, Your Honor, this was already the subject of a defense motion in limine that the court ruled upon. So we have in the transcript of the pretrial proceedings, the parties were arguing about whether or not this knowledge of danger of blanks would be admissible. And so what the court ruled was, the court said, the court makes the following ruling, weighing whether it has any tendency to make a fact more probable or less probable than it would be without it, and whether its probative value substantially is outweighed by the unfair prejudice. I think it's difficult to deal with what I read in the grand jury transcripts about, the theory about the negligent use of a deadly weapon is that this manner of handling, that he shouldn't have cocked the gun, etc.
And that goes to the whole thing about this, is that he is responsible for how he handled that weapon while it was cocked. He did not keep his finger away from the trigger. He should have known better, but the end result is the same. He pulled the trigger. the gun went off. It was pointed at Helena. She ended up being killed by that bullet. If he'd been handling it better and the gun went off, it would not have been pointed at her. If he'd been handling it better, his finger would not have been near the trigger. We already know people are at fault for not double checking to make sure that there weren't live rounds in that weapon, even though they assumed there shouldn't be. So you get lackadaisical, okay? The fact remains, it was his finger that pulled the trigger of the gun that was aimed at Helena that ended up killing her. Period. Nobody's saying he did it intentionally. Involuntary manslaughter. It was an accident, a horrible, fatal accident. Own up, Baldwin. You can't get out of this one.
And then with respect to the alternative is that he failed to check the gun. He failed to confirm that the gun, and I remember the word confirm, about live ammunition before he pointed it at someone. The court went on. I think that I will not allow any testimony other than one sentence, probably by your expert, Ms. Morrissey, that says the blanks also can kill. But to consider that he failed somehow, that's just going to be up to the trier of fact. I think everybody knows that guns can kill. It depends on what's in there. But I think that you cannot mention it, you can mention it, but that's it. We're not going through 5 different questions on tell me how serious this is, and if he's a gun owner and he's done all these Westerns or not Westerns, but all this gun experience, then he should have known. Just say that, and if you can tie that up, great. So that's specifically on this subject. And so we've already argued this, and the court has already ruled.
About
So
blank.
based on that, we are asking that the court, consistent with its previous ruling, exclude these portions. And the additional portions, there will be a number of other sections in the transcript that I think we can dispense with rather quickly once we have the court's ruling on that as well.
Is that the part about when he talks about the commingling? Is one of them about the commingling and the dummy rounds?
I don't recall, I have them flagged, but I think we can move through them fairly quickly, and I can identify those to the court every place that is throughout the transcript. But,
All right, thank you.
If I may. So my concern is that I didn't realize necessarily during the motion hearing, I thought we were talking about witness testimony, not the defendant's own statements. And let me try to articulate for the court where I think some difficulty may come in. If I have my expert do what the court suggested and just have him give the one sentence that blanks can kill, then what we're missing, the important part is that Mr. Baldwin knows that. So these statements that he made to Detective Hancock go directly to that one sentence that you're allowing us to get in, because Mr. Baldwin actually knows that, and the elements of the offense go directly to what he knew or should have known. That's in the actual jury instruction. So this is something that he knew or should have known. There are rules that say don't point the gun at anyone, and this is obviously one of the reasons, is because even if you have largely inert ammunition, it can still hurt someone, or Mr. Baldwin even indicated he knew that it could kill someone. So I think that this needs to be in for that reason.
Which motion was it?
Your Honor, it was Oliver W.
Fast forward a little bit. Because
Your Honor, I believe this is number 3. This would be defense 3, is that correct? Defendant's motion only 3, I believe it was. And we have the transcript if the court would like to relied on the court's ruling, and the court was very clear about what would be permitted and what would not be. And I think to say that the state thought that somehow didn't apply to statements they wanted to introduce by Mr. Baldwin is disingenuous. And so we relied on this again in our jury.
I will see the transcript.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to push the bill.
find it on me. The judge does have to weigh. That's why you wonder, well, why wasn't that allowed in? Because it was too prejudicial. And there has to be balancing act. You let enough of it in so the jury has good idea, but you don't go overboard. It's a balancing act that it's, oh, stop it, Baldwin.
You know, this was related to, and I think I say it here where I talk about on page 154, which you left out. But this is to Mr. Neepus, where he's saying that the statement such and such would have died if there were a blank in the gun. That they were asserting that they were going beyond live ammunition, and they were talking about that they expected witnesses to testify, in particular Mr. Carpenter, that that blanks can kill as well, and that he should have known that. That's different from his own admissions of his knowledge. And I'm going to let the following in. I'm going to let page 12, I'm going to let line 13, right in the middle. Sometimes the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. It shows that he does have knowledge of guns.
Hang on, Your Honor, just want to use, I see, I'm sorry.
And then on lines 18, 19, and I'm told even with a flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed. And then also lines 1 through 5 on page 13.
And Your Honor, I do understand the court's ruling. If I may, just for the court, just to remind, because I know we're dealing with the transcripts and we had these arguments earlier. So if I may, just to kind of perhaps refresh the court a little bit, part of what the arguments were about as well was the fact that the way that the grand jury presentation had gone, and in that had not been focused on blanks. It was about live ammunition, live rounds, and that was the basis of what the knowledge must be in order for it to meet the elements of the charge.
This is what in the grand jury, Mr. Carpenter was talking about all these duties that Mr. Baldwin should have had, including the knowledge that blanks can kill. He said that he should have had that knowledge. Everybody has that knowledge when they talk about don't pointing the gun and things like that. And I did not want to belabor the point that blanks can kill. Okay, but that's different from Mr. Baldwin's own assertions of the knowledge that he had with respect to guns. All right, next.
Your Honor, same argument from the state with regard to the bottom of page 14, the last two words that start with and I'm. And then if we, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. And then if we move to the top of 15, this is the exact same information, exact same argument. It's Mr. Baldwin solidifying and reiterating what he knew or should have known that goes directly to the elements of the offense. Nothing further.
And I'm sorry, Your Honor, I was actually retrieving my items. What page were we on?
If we go right down to the bottom of 14, and we just start with those two words, and then we just roll over to the first 4 lines of 15.
And so, the issue that we're going to have, again, with this, Your Honor, is that, we did not ask witnesses questions regarding this type of harm and what was learned. And certainly those kinds of things might have been able to come through Ms. Poppell. And so, and again, we did not do jury selection on this, which we absolutely would have. We didn't open on this because of the ruling and the way that we understood it based on our review of the transcript. So I do have concerns that this is going to prejudice the defense, and we would ask that the court consider not allowing
Attention to
this.
my ruling, because my ruling was with respect to witnesses, because I particularly told Ms. Morrissey that her witness got to ask her witness one sentence. And that is because Mr. Carpenter was really opinionated about that blanks can kill in the grand jury, and I did not want to move away from the fact that they weren't blanks, it was live ammunition. But this goes to Mr. Baldwin's state of mind, completely different, and I'm going to let this in as well. Page 15, 1 through 4, lines 1 through 4.
Do you know where the next jump is?
Yeah. Just to page 62. Jimmy, move over.
Huh?
Jimmy, move over.
No, you're fine. We'll just take some time and- Okay, Your Honor, we're jumping to the bottom of page 62. You know what? I'm gonna change my position. Why don't we go ahead and just exclude the bottom of 62 and the top of 63?
Yes, I agree.
What's the next one, Heather? Since you've got the tab.
The next one we have is 69.
So I think that as witness testimony, and it's difficult when we're doing motions in limine because the court certainly doesn't know what all the witness testimony is going to be. So part of the issue here is we were intending to ask the court to, not necessarily today with these witnesses, to potentially reconsider this ruling. I don't think it makes a big difference in this particular interview, but we absolutely have witnesses who will testify if the court were to permit them. The safety bulletins speak directly to producers and their responsibility for set safety. I can show it to you. In addition to that, the witnesses who were on scene with Mr. Baldwin would discuss the fact that his role as producer is what enabled him to be in a position to disregard the safety rules.
Yeah.
But with regard to this particular line, I'm not married to it. I can try to revisit this issue with the court when we have relevant witnesses on the witness stand.
Your Honor, the court had the ability to reserve.
So all I'm looking at is this line, okay?
Correct.
Both of you, and I'm going to not let it in.
Okay.
So it's moot, lady.
Okay, next.
Next is, this one's out by stipulation. Let me see. Next is page 81. A portion of that is out by stipulation, but I believe the next is page 81.
Yes.
The top portion of that is out by stipulation, I believe, but then the lower part of page 81 is still subject to disagreement.
Let me just refresh my memory on what it is.
They make reference in a bit to,
So,
should have been done before.
but some of this contains his, wait a minute, let me.
They make a quick reference to it in a bit that the defense is bringing this up late. So the allowances the judge is making should be recognized as, you're lucky I did this.
I guess the top part of it is directly related to what he's talking about at the beginning, which the court admitted. So my concern is I don't think that if we take out, and on Saturday, my daughter was going to be in the movie, we had a little part for her, in this top. So I want to point out that here at the bottom of page 81, Mr. Baldwin says, well, let me ask you this. Originally, this is very complicated. I mean, none of this compared to what happened to them, but my wife and my whole family was here. They weren't, but his daughter was going to be in the movie. So again, this goes to the opening arguments, the continuing defense that we are going to hear throughout the course of this trial. Mr. Baldwin at this point in time knows that someone's in the hospital and another person has been taken away on a helicopter, is critically injured, and what he is concerned about during the interview is what's happening to his family and whether or not his family is going to come and visit him. So he's actually taking a moment in the interview with the detective to talk about, this is complicated because my family is supposed to come.
All right, thank you.
So, Your Honor, the court has already ruled admissible the previous portion of this. And again, I think when the court is looking at balancing, the court can also determine how much of this to permit in. It is cumulative of what the state already has used the earlier statements to reference, which would be his supposed state of mind after the fact. I don't know how much we need to then, continue to allow in all of the rest of this over and over. And certainly, again,
Over and over. You mean like your partner in crime, your co-defense counsel was badgering the witnesses over and over and over to try to get them to say what he wanted them to say in the manner he wanted them to say it in? And now you're going to complain about, oh, well, it's a little bit too much. They go over and over and over. Really? Really?
again, him wanting to have his family there with him is not shocking after something like this. It is certainly a very difficult time. But again, the court, as the court is looking at the balancing, one of those things that the court will balance is the cumulative nature of what is being offered. The court has already ruled admissible the previous statements, and we would ask that the court not allow additional statements related to that at this time based on the limited probative value of the testimony or evidence.
All right, I don't think this is of much consequence. I think that the part I ruled on earlier went to rebut the information about his coloring and everything else like that. Granted, there was a lapse in time, so that can be addressed in questioning. But the fact that his daughter was going to be in the movie and he's mentioning that, I don't think that, and she was so excited to come, I don't think that's helpful. He's just describing really his kids. That's not coming in.
Understood. Is the next one on page 83? Is that what you have?
Yes. In the first, I think, 5 lines are out by stipulation, and then we're just dealing with them 6.
Right, so 6 through 14, certainly the top part is an explanation of his comments at the beginning that the court has ruled are admissible. But I certainly can forfeit, I told the producers I would stay tomorrow in case anybody else, their insurance investigators, their lawyers want to talk to me. I don't have too much heartburn over letting that go, but I do think that the fact that there are 2 people who've been taken away to the hospital, and Mr. Baldwin is upset because his wife wants to cancel her trip, again, goes directly to the defense of this man was devastated.
Go ahead.
So, Your Honor, first, the state, this was already part of the stipulation, was through page 83, line 5. So I won't argue that since the state had already stipulated to that earlier. With respect to lines 6 through 14, much of what is being relayed here is actually his wife's statements, about what she thought about, the weird energy or whether or not she wanted to come down. And so I think, again, the state has already, is already going to be permitted to introduce those other statements related to his state of mind. This has very minimal probative value, particularly considering the court's ruling a moment ago, and we would ask that the court exclude this, particularly, again, considering the fact that a lot of this is about his wife and her thoughts as well, and it's not sufficiently probative.
Yeah, I don't think it's very relevant. I think, and the relevancy goes to the rebuttal of how he was feeling. I think that the pages 4 and 5 directly relate to that, but I don't think this does. So I'm not going to redact it. Last page.
There is further down on the same page. I believe it starts at line 22 of page 83 and then continues on into page 84, line 8.
So Mr. Baldwin has critically injured someone, and what he's saying to the detective, and keep in mind, Your Honor, Mr. Baldwin was going to stay and complete originally he was going to be in New Mexico to complete the filming until I think close to the end of October. And he is already making plans to return home to New York, even though he's critically injured 2 people. It is the exact opposite of what the defense is going to argue, which is this was devastating to him. This devastating. I think there's even phrases in this interview where he says, "I'm devastated," or maybe it's in November 3rd. So this is completely contradictory to other statements that he makes where he says, "I'm devastated." 2 people are in the hospital and he doesn't even want to stay and make sure they're okay.
Your Honor, he offered to stay, and that's throughout this transcript. It even says it further down on this same page. He says, "Unless you tell me not to, or if you tell me to come back in, I'll do whatever it is that you want." He's making himself completely available, but not shockingly, his wife wants him home. He is a father.
It's the rebuttal. It's going to be redacted. All right, next.
The next one is out by stipulation, which is on page 85.
I think that's it. Could it be?
That may be on this one. I will
Oh,
note,
you
Your Honor,
stipulated to, okay, what?
there were other portions within here that we had found that were related to the blank situation. I understand the court's ruling. If the court is willing to consider as part of its gatekeeping function, limiting the amount of that.
Too late,
just the amount.
too
I
late.
understand.
That's what happens when you do
understand
2 days before. Okay, let's go.
Just in terms of, I know that we've got one more statement to try to tackle. So now that the court has ruled on the redactions, because these are the defense requests, I'm expecting the defense to do the redactions and provide them to me quickly, because this is Hancock, and Hancock's going to take the witness stand as soon as possible.
That is our intention.
Well, you're finished, so you're going to do, oh, that's right, okay, I apologize.
So 10 minutes max.
Okay, and then you're going to do the redirect. So while they're doing that, go ahead and provide a copy with the redactions that I've ruled to
Yes,
be
ma'am.
redacted, which were minimal. Okay,
Yes, Judge.
what's next?
There is the second statement.
So
Ms. Rebecca.
Yeah. The second statement, this is a statement that takes place on
I hope you
November.
got that. Do you need any clarification? Because I don't want this going south when Hancock's on the stand. Do you want me to repeat it?
I think we have it.
Okay.
Transcript on it. I think we have it from the transcript.
No, my rulings. So,
Yes, we have real time.
all right, okay. Okay, what's next? I said the jury comes back at 2. They have 1 minute before I call back
Yes.
the jury. Otherwise, you're going to abandon these.
Yes, Your Honor, we'll be quick.
So, if we look at this part at the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2,
This is what I'm going to do because we're running out of time. I'm going to make a ruling. These were given to, your intended redactions were given 2 days before. And so far, the only thing I've heard that was a surprise was the testimony of his knowledge of guns. So let's see. Well, I mean, everybody got to point somewhere. I don't find that, I'm going to redact that. I don't find that's relevant. It's just in passing, really. And he's talking about other people.
well, and if I can,
Sure,
Your Honor, I just want to talk about it in a little bit more context. So what's happening here is Detective Hancock and Mr. Baldwin are talking about Ms. Gutierrez and her lawyers. Ms. Gutierrez is obviously her conduct is being discussed extensively. Mr. Baldwin says, but it's her lawyer saying that on her behalf. So if we're going to redact the bottom portion, then honestly, I think that we need to redact the part where he says it's her lawyer saying that on her behalf. I mean, I think if we redact the part about the lawyers, we redact everything.
That's fine. It does take it out of like nowhere context. Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then if you really want to argue it. All right, page 15. I don't find this relevant. But
Okay, Pete, I'm sorry. Let me catch up to you.
sure. Yeah.
So this is relevant because what Mr. Baldwin is talking about right here to Hancock is his intention to sit for a public interview, and that public interview turns out to be with George Stephanopoulos. It was that interview that led to the accidental discharge testing and all kinds of stuff. So again, Judge, it's the defendant's own statement. He knew he had a right to
All
counsel.
right, I'll let 1 through 6 in, but this thing about the Kennedy Center is not coming in. 1 through 6 on page 15.
1 through 6 comes in, the rest of it's out. Understood.
Page 18. Tell me why this is relevant or not relevant or relevant. Ms. Morrissey.
Okay, let me just.
Let her catch up.
Sure. So the top part is him saying to Detective Hancock, "You don't know anything about my business. You don't know anything about my business. You're in law enforcement. You're the person who, when they do something wrong, you're the last person they want to see. You live a very, very difficult but ultimately very narrow life. I believe." Hang on. Let me finish it a little bit. Well, it all goes, I think we've got like three or four pages, so I think it all kind of goes together. Hang on just a second. Okay, so this part, I mean, the part at the bottom of 18, it puts in context the part at the top of 19, and this goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's motivation to lie about pulling the trigger of the gun. I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore. He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation not to tell the truth. Sorry.
Can we approach it briefly?
Sure.
He had to go potty bad. The shot they showed right before he got up and left, he's like, "Can you guys hurry up and get this over with so we can take a break and I can go to the bathroom?" He must have forgotten his depends. I shouldn't say that. Shouldn't joke about that. But it's hard. That's another reason why I couldn't be in a jury. I couldn't sit there for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours straight. without needing to go to the bathroom. So let me well, I was going to, but no. We'll wait and see.
I don't think this information is that helpful one way or the other, but I'm going to let it in because of the lateness of your redactions. So because it's 2:00 now, and so we're going to go. All right.
I understand your just briefly just be heard on that point.
No. All right. Get your redactions in earlier.
Understood here.
And that includes 20 minutes.
Everything I put on is coming in. Do you understand? That page forward
Yes,
So everything subsequent to.
and that page.
okay.
Can you get him out of the bathroom? No, I feel for him in that respect. I mentioned yesterday that he looked.
We're asking Coach for questions.
Wonder if he's got a bug. Microphone's on. I'm on.
This would welcome Ms. Morrissey first. Ms. Morrissey. This goes on the record.
Gotcha. Did you ask for us to come up?
Yes.
I just, okay.
Yeah,
Come up?
yes.
I just, okay.
Yeah,
Come up?
yes.
Well, move forward.
I just,
That gun for DNA, did you?
Yeah,
come up?
yes.
I just, okay.
Okay, they're standing. That means the jury's coming in. Excuse me. The jury's in.
Go ahead.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Spiro.
Good afternoon. You had seen when you were testifying earlier, Mr. Baldwin in court today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time that you've seen him since, I believe, since the day that the incident occurred?
Correct.
And of course, you see him here as a defendant in a courtroom wearing a suit jacket. He wasn't dressed like that on the scene, right?
Right.
He was Harlan Rust, and he had his actor costume on, right?
Yes,
And you actually took those clothes and tested them for blood, like you said before, right?
I did.
And he was shaking as you did that, was he not?
He seemed upset as I did that.
And of course, you remember that, right?
Yes,
And the lapel that you've reviewed has refreshed your memory.
correct.
And you know that he received a phone call from his friend Joel, the director who had been shot, and you used that information to then send officers to the hospital to retrieve the bullet, correct?
I believe we already had deputies at the hospital at that time.
But he told you that and told you that would be something that he wanted you to do, right?
He indicated it was something he wanted law enforcement to do, but we were already making the necessary, we were already sending a deputy to the hospital to retrieve it.
He's trying to insinuate that Mr. Baldwin was directing everything? Are you kidding me?
And he told you that he pulled the gun out, he turned, and he just cocked the gun, right?
He did state that, yes.
He didn't say he pulled the trigger, right?
I don't recall him saying that.
And you never tested the hammer of that gun for DNA, did you?
I do not know the FBI lab's process for processing a firearm for DNA.
But because he told you that, and I'm putting up A10, defense exhibit, that's why you knew that the document that had fallen near Ms. Hutchins that says macro on hammer as thumb cocks it was so important. Isn't that right?
There was a paper inside of the church that indicated a firearm was being used. So I photographed it. We had paperwork that was later collected out of Ms. Hutchins's side bag that was also additional script. And that was collected because it was part of her bag, part of her personal property.
And you see the name Helena on top, right?
Yes, this is what was taken out of her bag.
And what was at the floor, A3, Russ Colt cocked quietly now. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you and your fellow officers discussed this and said, this is important. It confirms what he told us, didn't you?
I believe that I stated it was important because it was a script that involved a firearm inside the church where a shooting had occurred.
Again, he's going over and over and over on a point, trying to elicit her to say what he wants her to say, and trying to put words in her mouth. And she's enough of a professional that she's not going to do it. There wasn't this big conspiracy. Oh, we got it. On the one hand, we got to prove that he said this. But yet, on the other hand, the test to prove his theory ended up doing damage to the gun. We're not allowed to do that. Make up your mind.
And after this point in time, eventually, you all sent that firearm off, not to have the firearm tested, its hammer for DNA, but rather for it to end up being destroyed in the testing.
Why are you stressing about DNA on the gun? Mr. Baldwin used that gun many times. This wasn't the first time he picked it up. His DNA would be on the trigger because he had fired it before.
Or broken in the testing, if you prefer.
The firearm was sent for DNA, and additional testing was not conducted until later.
We were talking also, to move away from the firearm for a second, about how the lethal round got on set, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Baldwin, you actually told him that you would figure it out. You gave him that assurance. You said, I get it. I know that there was a live round wasn't supposed to be on set. We law enforcement are going to find that out, didn't you?
I believe the words that I used was, that's why we're here. We're here to try and figure out what happened.
And one of your fellow officers sort of came over the top of you and sort of confirmed to him, don't worry, we're going to find out.
Effect on listener? What? One word, but objection. Yes. What is it?
Objection, hearsay, the officer isn't here. Who is meeting up?
Respond.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted, that is heard.
Okay. Well, did you lay the foundation for that? Did you ask her what she did because of that?
Not yet, I can't.
Okay.
And after you,
Foundation for effect on listener.
after what you said and what you heard from your fellow officer, it is true, as you testified previously, that you did go out to seek the source of that lethal round, right?
Please rephrase your question as to the word seek.
Sure. After you said what you said and the officer said what he said, is it not the case that you made it a priority to try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Our priority was to find the facts of what had happened in this situation.
And one of the steps that you took that we talked about by searching the truck, by going to Seth Kenny, by getting the PDQ, one of the things you then did was you did seek out and try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And as you were doing that, you continued to work with Corporal Hancock, right?
Yes.
You would see her and the prosecutors often, right?
I would see Corporal Hancock more often.
And you testified previously about the search for the lethal ammunition at the trial of the armorer, correct?
Yes.
And a question came up at that trial of this issue of, did Seth Kenny really provide the ammunition to send or not, right?
Yes, I believe that came up.
Okay. And eventually there was a verdict in that case, right?
Yes.
And a good Samaritan walked into the police station and gave you the lethal ammunition, didn't they?
After the Hannah Gutierrez trial, there was an individual that came to the police station and stated they had ammunition.
And they turned in the ammunition.
You got to hear the rebuttal on this when Morrissey comes back up.
Yes,
And they gave it to you, right?
yes.
And they told you that this was the ammunition that ended up with Seth Kenny that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
I do not recall all of their statements.
Who did you tell about that?
During that conversation, my Lieutenant Brian Brandel, was with me, and Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office.
And you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation,
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
The document it.
I mean, what does that mean?
We were documenting information that this individual came and gave this ammunition to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the Rush shooting, correct?
Yes,
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer. Yes.
And he told you you all had been duped by Seth Kenny, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance, didn't he?
I don't recall that. No,
Okay. And he said to you, I'm willing to fill out a witness statement, right?
no, I don't recall that.
He told you that the rounds came from a green ammo can, didn't he?
Sustained.
Did you take the rounds that were provided to you? By the way, they were Starline brass nickel primer live, weren't they?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Really?
That is what I said.
Really? She doesn't recall. Give it up, Sligo.
Well, it's information acted upon is going to be my response. But he told you the reason that he was coming in is because he didn't trust law enforcement on this case.
Well, you know what? She's going to object to hearsay, and you're going to say effect on listener.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to lay your foundation better. You
Yeah.
are.
So
I wonder who all was laughing.
let me ask this question. How come law enforcement didn't voucher this with the rest of the evidence in the Rush case?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word voucher.
How come you didn't inventory it and put it with all the rest of the evidence in the Rush case?
I was instructed to put this in as a doc information case, which I did, and it is under that case number.
You buried it.
No.
Your lieutenant?
There is a supplemental report on it, and that was placed into evidence.
Did you ever turn that over to the defense?
I have not turned over anything to the defense. My information goes through the sheriff's office.
Are you aware of whether the sheriff's office ever informed the defense that a Good Samaritan came in and turned in his ammunition?
I do not know.
When the defense came to view the Starline brass nickel primer live ammunition with you, you didn't show them this, did you?
I did not have an evidence viewing with the defense. That was my coworker.
Your coworker didn't show this to the defense, correct?
I do not know.
Do you have any reason to believe your coworker showed this to the defense, given that it wasn't put in the same inventory as the Rust case?
No.
Can't testify what her coworker did.
Did you or anyone from the sheriff's office ever tell the armorer or her lawyers that a Good Samaritan came in after the verdict and gave you this information?
I do not know.
He's trying. Gotta get him.
But you do agree. He did tell you that Seth said this was the evidence from the shooting, correct?
I don't recall what he stated, what someone else stated.
And you told him he didn't have to write a witness statement. Law enforcement was going to type up a report on it today, right?
I never stated any such thing about a witness statement.
He offered to provide a written witness statement so that it was clear. Did he not?
I do not recall that happening.
Okay. Did you give him assurances that you would type up a report on it?
I don't recall providing assurances to him.
Did you tell him that you would write up a report on it?
I don't recall doing that either.
Do you deny it?
No.
So when you testified earlier that you never found the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, that wasn't true either, was it?
Can you rephrase the way you stated that?
Sure. As you sit here today, having had a good Samaritan turn in these 45 rounds into the precinct, right?
If that's what you're discussing, then
Yeah. You don't know whether or not you have in your possession the live rounds that killed Miss Hutchins, do you?
the live round that killed Miss Hutchins has been fired. Are you asking me about a connection between those live rounds and other ones?
I'm asking you, as we've talked about at great length, whether or not you withdraw. I'm asking you, isn't it the case that law enforcement likely has the matching rounds to the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins?
I do not know.
And you do not know because you made a doc report about this and did not put it with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Those rounds were not placed with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Nor were they sent to the FBI for testing with the rust evidence, were they?
No, they were not.
Look at him gloat. See what my lawyer just did?
I've never heard the questions for this witness this time.
Redirect.
This is good.
Ms. Poppell, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No,
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
no.
Mr. Spiro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the sheriff's department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
Would you take end of February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection, leading, objection, irrelevant.
Overruled, overruled.
Please answer.
No, I had no knowledge of that.
Little pom poms, yay, yay, Morrissey, yay. Leading. He's got the nerve. I'm gonna buy me little pom poms.
Now, to be clear, is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
To try to clarify some points, Starline Brass, is that a brand of ammunition?
Yes, it is.
Is it a brand of ammunition or a casing?
It is a casing.
Okay.
Isn't that the
And-
same thing?
The live rounds from a set of rust had nickel primers, right?
Yes.
Objection, leading, every question.
Overruled.
Yay!
So let me ask you this. When you went to PDQ to conduct your search, because you're not the detective, do you remember whether you had any surveillance video or not?
I don't remember.
So with regard to Mr. Kinney, prior to the search of PDQ, did Mr. Kinney actually bring his own live ammunition to the police station?
Yes.
So before you ever executed a search warrant, he went to the police station and said, I want to give you a sample of my live ammunition.
Yes.
And you took that and you sent it to the FBI, right?
Correct.
Now, with regard to ammunition, characteristics of some of this ammunition is it says Starline brass on the top, right? And when I say it says Starline brass, describe to the jurors what the emblem is that we see.
It is a star, an arching line, and then another star.
The live ammunition that was
The
taken
brand.
from PDQ, was it all Starline brass?
No.
Was it all nickel primers?
No.
Now, in addition to the stamp on the top of the casing and the color of the primer, does ammunition have different shaped projectiles?
Yes.
And when we're talking about the projectile, we're talking about, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the nose of the bullet, so what actually gets projected out the barrel of the gun.
Hold on, please.
Good way to put it. The nose of the bullet.
I'm showing you what's been previously admitted at State's Exhibit 26. Remind us, which are the live rounds? The suspected live rounds, sorry, we'll get there.
The ones to the right,
And what are the ones on the left?
they are dummy rounds.
Is there a different shape to the tip of the projectile?
Yes.
It's so subtle I can't.
Tell us what the difference is.
So the live rounds. Okay. So the live rounds have a flattened surface to them, whereas our dummy rounds come to a further point. Sorry, I was trying to draw a line. Almost like a curvature to a better point.
At my request, prior to the Gutierrez trial, did you take out a ruler and measure those?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall the size of what we call the meplet, which is that very top of the projectile? Do you recall the size of the live rounds?
Yes, the live rounds were 6 millimeters and the dummy rounds were 4 millimeters.
Every single live round, well, suspected live round, taken from the set of rust, was it a 6 millimeter meplet?
Yes,
All of the live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, to include the live ammunition that Seth Kinney brought into the sheriff's station, did any of those have 6 millimeter meplets?
no,
Do you have any evidence that Seth Kinney is the source of the live rounds on rust?
no,
If you know, is there evidence that Hannah Gutierrez brought the live rounds onto the set of rust?
yes.
What is that evidence? Let's talk about it.
The evidence that I am aware of is a photograph on a cell phone of the rounds in the background of a photograph that was taken with a cell phone. Those rounds are the same ones from the same box that were being pulled from that day that were handed to Lieutenant Benavides.
Let me see if I can find an exhibit to help us.
Was that the 17 count one?
State's Exhibit 12. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and clear your screen, the marks. Is this the box you're referring to right here?
Yes,
Is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez admitted to bringing that box on the set?
yes,
And is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez actually provided evidence to the sheriff's department that she was provided that box by her father?
yes,
And that Good Samaritan, who came in with the live rounds and was telling you Seth Kinney's the bad guy, that happened how long after the incident?
that happened well after the incident in after February, so March of this year.
So Ms. Hutchins died in what year?
In October of 2021.
And Mr. Teskey, Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction?
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection. Assumes facts, not evidence. Misleading.
Overruled, unless you want to come up and tell me.
Yes, I could.
All right, come on up.
He's not happy. Oh, he's not happy. No, now. The facts are in evidence. The fact of the date of the trial, the fact of when he brought them in. I think.
Reporter, would you read back the last question, please?
One. Little pom-poms. Little pom-poms. I gotta find me some little pom-poms.
And Mr. Teskey, Honey Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction. Is that right?
Go ahead and answer.
Yes.
In your experience, if Seth Kinney wanted to hide the fact that he had live ammunition at PDQ, he had plenty of time to get rid of it, right?
Yes.
And you found some there, right?
Yes.
And the photograph, well, was all of the live ammunition in the same place?
Yes.
Where was it found?
It was in a box on the bottom of a stack labeled as live ammo.
And let me, for completeness, was there live ammunition found in another room away from this box?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Did you find any ammunition that was not .45 caliber anywhere else at PDQ?
I believe there were 2 boxes of marked 38 caliber ammunition that were in another room.
Did Mr. Kinney tell you that his personal firearms are 38?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously admitted as defendants A23. Is this, so when we're talking about .45 caliber ammunition, well, let's back up. Is that the only caliber of live ammunition or suspected live ammunition found on the set of arrest?
Yes.
21, you said?
23, A23. So if you find 38 live ammunition, is that important to you?
No.
Because 38 is not 45, right?
Correct.
So the .45 caliber ammunition that you found at PDQ, is this where you found it?
Yes.
Any mistaking that that would be live ammunition?
No.
Why?
It was clearly marked as live ammunition in that box.
And let me ask you, Ms. Poppell, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, when he, that ammunition that he brought to you after her conviction, you still have it?
Yes.
You can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right?
Yes.
And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of arrest, correct?
Yes.
And that is obvious just when you look at it, is it not?
Yes.
I like her sass.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set of arrest by Seth Kinney?
If I recall correctly, just 1.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set by Hannah Gutierrez?
No, I do not.
Okay, fair enough.
Notice she doesn't press like somebody else does.
Now, you were asked some questions on cross-examination, and I think they were related to, let me get the exhibit just so that we know what we're talking about.
Mrs. Willard, it skipped before.
You were asked some questions about the live ammunition in the other actor's gun belt. You remember those questions on cross?
Yes.
And I think the actor was Jensen Ackles.
Correct.
He was on Days of Our Lives.
Do you know whether or not Jensen Ackles checked his firearm on the set of the movie?
No, I do not.
Whether he did his own safety checks?
I do not know.
I heard somewhere that he did. That he was very conscientious with his gun.
Let's talk briefly about, let me make sure I have the proper exhibit numbers for the record. I want to be clear, if you recall, I'm showing you defendants A27. Where did those dummy rounds come from?
These were the dummy rounds removed from the box with blue writing that stated dummy rounds.
And who do you know supplied those rounds?
Seth Kenny.
And I think I made a mistake on direct examination. This is State's Exhibit 30. Is that what I showed you?
Yes, I believe so.
And so those actually didn't come out of that box, did they?
Correct.
Do you know where they came from?
They came from a gun belt that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defendants A26. Is that where they came from?
Yes.
Based on the dummy rounds in both of these pictures, from the box and from the gun belt, do they have distinctive characteristics?
Yes.
Have they been identified? Who do you know who supplied all of the dummy rounds that were in the gun belt and in the box?
Yes, that was Seth Kenny.
All right. You were asked some questions about some documents that you photographed. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
I'm trying to find them. Our counsel, are all of the exhibits still up here? Take on this.
Oh, was it? No, I have these. I have the script which helps.
Those are the exhibits? Does it say copy? Okay, can I use them?
Yes.
Okay, as long as they're the same.
That's it.
Okay, we'll just use your copies. This is Defendant's Exhibit A10. You remember being shown this?
Yes.
You might have to go to the bathroom again.
Do you have any idea when this exhibit, or I'm sorry, when scene 125 was being filmed?
No, I do not.
Same question for scene, is it 55 or 66? I apologize.
No.
68,
No.
115,
No.
118,
No.
121,
No.
130.
No.
In fact, if you know, was Ms. Hutchins killed during the filming of an actual scene?
No, she was not.
She was not. Is that right?
Correct.
Same thing here for 118 again. Ms. Hutchins wasn't killed during the filming of a scene, was she?
No, she was not.
She was doing blocking for a scene, but they weren't actually filming it.
Do you know, if you do you know who wrote the script?
No, I do not.
Do you know who the director of the movie was?
I believe that was Joel Sousa.
Do you know whether or not he's going to come in and testify?
No, I do not.
Did he testify in the Gutierrez trial?
I believe he did, yes.
Did you interview the person who wrote the script?
No.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in the room at the time of the shooting?
No, I did not.
So you haven't talked to a single person who could tell you whether these defense A3 and A10 are relevant at all. Is that right?
Correct.
You were asked by Mr. Spyro whether or not it was true that live ammunition should never be on a movie set, and you said that was correct. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You've never worked on a movie set before, have you?
No, I've not.
How do you know that?
Makes sense to me. Makes common sense.
But do you know?
No, I do not know the rules of movie sets.
You're not aware that there are safety bulletins for the use of live ammunition on movie sets?
No, I did not know that.
All total, including prop truck, the entire scene out there at Bonanza Creek, how many real firearms were taken into evidence?
If I can look at my report.
Sure.
I believe 13 in total.
13 real firearms.
Yes.
Now, you were asked some questions about Mr. Kinney being present at the search of the prop truck. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you remember why he was present?
I don't recall the details of why he was present.
Do you recall how the sheriff's department got access to the safe?
Yes, Seth Kenny provided us with the combination.
And the firearms that you recovered, real and fake, who did they belong to?
Is my understanding they belong to Seth Kenny.
Would you say that those firearms were many thousands of dollars in value?
Yes.
And do you know who provided the vast majority of the blank ammunition?
That I do not know.
Okay. Does it surprise you that the person who owns the guns had access to the safe?
No.
Have you ever discovered any evidence that Seth Kenny was ever physically present on the set of Rust other than the day that he helped unlock the safe for your search?
No.
I don't know if there's a clock up there on the wall that Baldwin keeps
Do
looking.
you recall you were asked some questions about, you had information about a green ammo can, and that was one of the reasons that you executed the search warrant. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you remember where you got the information about the green ammo can?
I do not.
Did you review any of the photographs from any of the cell phone extractions that were done in this case?
No.
Did you look at any of the text messages between the different witnesses in this case?
No.
Do you have any information that Hannah Gutierrez previously asked if she could have live ammunition on the movie set she was working on with Nicolas Cage?
I do not have that information.
Okay. Now, I understand we've got some photographs of PDQ, and it looked like it was really packed full of stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you called it a warehouse. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about how big that facility is?
It's a very small facility. It has an upfront office, a hallway that leads to a bathroom, and one small workshop room, and then a room towards the back.
Is it possible for you to estimate the square footage?
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. It's a small building.
Yes.
Now, as a crime scene technician, are you trained to find pieces of evidence in difficult areas?
Yes.
Have you ever been in a person's home or apartment that kind of looked like a hoarder place?
Yes.
How many times do you think that's happened to you?
Several dozen,
Several dozen.
at least. Yes.
And you're trained to look for evidence in that kind of environment.
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Mr. Kenny's business is a prop house?
Yes.
Would you expect a prop house to be full of props?
Yes.
Was the prop house indeed full of movie props?
Yes.
Did anyone live there?
I don't believe so. No.
That was
Do you have any idea,
Question.
based on the investigation that you did, whether or not Mr. Baldwin cocked the gun when he wasn't supposed to?
I do not have any information based on what I conducted. No.
Because you didn't interview any of those witnesses, right?
Correct.
You were asked some questions, or at least one or two questions, about your pretrial interview with the defense attorneys. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Mr. Spiro even present at your pretrial interview?
I don't believe so. No.
I'm almost done. Let me just review my notes.
I have two questions from the jury.
Okay. If you know the investigation into the source of the live rounds, did that investigation continue after the case was turned over to the district attorney's office?
I do not know.
As a crime scene technician, in your experience, do revolvers go off by themselves?
Objection?
Yeah.
701, 702.
Withdrawn.
All right, thank you. That was sustained.
I want to just back up real quick. You were asked a question on cross-examination about specifically information that you had prior to putting in the request for the accidental discharge testing. You recall that question?
Yes.
And I think you testified that you didn't recall what information you received. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you were provided a document to refresh your memory. Do you recall that?
Yes.
May I approach?
Are you finished with that problem? Yeah. That demonstrative evidence.
Thank you, Judge. No problem.
Ms. Poppell, you had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
How many pages is it?
It is 3 pages.
Does that document say anything about accidental discharge testing?
Objection.
That is that's a refresh of memory, so it doesn't have to.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to sustain his objection.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question and maybe let's see how it goes. Does it say anything about the gun being destroyed?
No. I'm sorry. No.
Did that document refresh your memory as to what you understood from the FBI about what the condition of the gun would be after the testing?
Yes.
It does.
Does refresh my memory. Yes. I'm sorry. Can you restate that?
Does that document, the question you were asked on cross-examination was about the information that,
Counsel,
okay.
I'm sorry to break you up, but let me give you these.
is the defense ready to jump up and go, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't know if I don't know. I'm biased. I have to just say I'm biased. Skullduggery is afoot. Well, it can be a whole body for that matter, but you know what I mean. It usually exudes from the brain. What she's holding in her hand are two questions from the jury. My understanding is when the questions come to the judge, in the areas that allow it, because some areas don't allow questions from the jury, the judge has to determine. I'm going to finish talking, so let me.
Ms. Poppell,
My understanding is when it comes from the jury, in areas that allow questions from the jury, it goes to the judge. The judge determines whether or not it's appropriate or lawful to present it to the lawyers, who then they look at it and agree whether or not it's presentable. And sometimes how to ask the questions, if it needs to be phrased in a certain way. That's my understanding.
was a fanny pack collected from the set of Rust?
Yes.
Do you know who the fanny pack belonged to?
Yes.
Who's that?
That was Hannah Gutierrez.
And was any of the live ammunition found in the fanny pack?
No.
So after Ms. Hutchins was shot, do you know whether or not the gun was unloaded by anyone on the set?
Yeah.
The information that was relayed to me was that the firearm was emptied by Hannah onto the cart.
Emptied by Hannah onto the cart, where there's photographs of another live shell, which means, and she's going to say here in a minute, and I'm sorry I interrupted soon, the spent shell casing was emptied onto the cart along with the rest of the bullets, I guess. And one of those was a live bullet. That's pretty nasty, if you get my drift.
Does that include the spent casing?
Yes.
All right, Council President.
That's pretty nasty. There were 2 live rounds in the gun that Mr. Baldwin was waving around and not being as diligently careful as he should have been. Involuntary means accidental. It was an accident, but it resulted in somebody dying. Hence, involuntary manslaughter.
I'll pass the witness.
I just have one question. The Good Samaritan asked you, in reference to the ammunition he provided, question, and that's the one that killed Helena. And you said yes, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
I don't deny it.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take our afternoon bathroom break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and let's try to get back in around 3:20. Okay, thank you.
Please, your pads and your chairs. All rise to the jury.
Let's see how close I can get. And this is Mr. Alessandro Pietta. He's the one who manufactured the gun that was used. I'm going to do it by 10 seconds. If you remember the Karen Reed trial, 22-second phone call, a lot can go on in 22 seconds. I think this is the jury coming in. All right, I'm counting down because it's like 1:30 in the morning for me because I was an idiot and only recorded myself and not the whole thing. I forgot to bring up the image.
This case calls Alessandro Pietta. Will you raise your right hand?
Please, Judge, please.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I would.
All right. Have a seat, talk into the microphone.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandro Pietta. I come from Italy. I am a gun manufacturer. I'm actually the guy that made the gun that been used in the movie.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm going to slow this down.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate all the
All right.
information, but I have to ask you a question and then you answer the question.
Sorry.
All right. So you've told us you're a gun manufacturer. Is
Yes,
that
I
right? And what company do you own?
It's named Fab Fratelli Pietta.
Okay. And do you manufacture Pietta Firearms?
Yes, that's the name of the company in English.
How long have you been manufacturing firearms?
The company has been founded in 1963 from our lab, and my brother and myself are running the company since 2000.
And are you familiar with how Pietta Firearms are actually made?
Yes, of course.
And how are you familiar?
I've been working in the company since 1995, and I've been taught by my dad how to produce a gun and assist my brother producing, studying engineering demo.
Does Pietta Firearms have quality control measures and inspections of their firearms?
Yes, we do.
And what are those?
We start from raw material, and then we check all the machining part, and then we got our quality control on the assembly department, and of course, before shipping the gun to the customer. So we got several steps in our procedure line.
And does Pietta Firearms use, what kind of manufacturing technology does Pietta Firearms use?
Well, we've been involved a lot in the industrial 4.0. That means that we are using the most actual manufacturing technology available on the market.
So you're basically high-tech technology?
Yeah, we use CNC machine, full control of robotic system. It's not just by hand, but also use the modern technology.
Okay. So, excuse me, what does Pietta Firearms do to ensure that a gun that leaves Pietta Firearms doesn't have any defects? And Mr. Pietta, if I can just have you pull the microphone a little closer and then speak a little slower.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
And then if you could just speak a little slower, please.
sure. We do have our quality control operation, but being an Italian manufacturer, by law, we had to send the gun to a national proof house. It's not a private company, but it's a public company. And all the guns that we produce, all the guns that are imported or made in Italy, need to be tested by this proof house. They have their own standard quality controls, and they also give us a certificate, and they stamp on the gun their marks. So there are different systems that we use to check the guns.
What is a proof house?
A proof house is a public company that shoot the gun, test the gun, take certain dimension. We have CIP homologations that is different from the American. It's called SAMI, but they're very similar on the concept. We have certain dimension and we check in order to be sure that the gun works properly. They also shoot the gun higher pressure, so they know that the gun will not blow up during your regular training section. And of course, they check all the safeties on the guns.
So before the gun leaves your company, Pietta Firearms, do you guys do checks of the guns first?
We do our own final check for quality reports. That mean that we also looking for aesthetical defects. And of course, we do our own quality on the trigger pull or on the action to be sure that everything in proper situation.
And so in addition to that, then it goes to the proof house and they do their checks as well?
The proof house check the gun as a piece of steel, if you pass that name. I check the gun for the customer because they want to get a nice gun, so without any scratches or without any cosmetical defects.
Does that also involve checking the internal parts of the gun to make sure that there are no defects?
That's done before by our quality control office, and we do that in the company.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 50.
No objection.
Your Honor, being that there is no objection, I would move into evidence State's Exhibit 50 and ask to have it published. On the screen in front of you, Mr. Pietta, is State's Exhibit 50. Do you recognize that?
Yeah,
What
it's
is
one
it?
of our single action revolver. Probably, actually, it's written 45 long Colt. That's the caliber, 7.5 barrel length.
Are you familiar with this particular gun?
I know this gun because I know that gun has been produced for a trade show called SHOT Show, and has been shipped to Vegas in particular for that show.
Were you involved in the manufacture of this particular gun?
I was personally involved producing this sample for that trade show.
Okay. And do you recall when this gun was manufactured?
I guess 2016 or 2017.
Okay. How do you manufacture this particular firearm?
Well, I would not say manufacturer. I could say I prepare this gun because being a replica, we need to make our customer happy. And of course, our main customers are collectors. So when we prepare a new sample or a new model, we study the books. So we study the American history and we look for details just to make a new model. That's why I've been involved to introduce this gun during this trade show.
So you said this was a single action revolver.
This is a single action type revolver. It means that every time you want to shoot, you need to pull the hammer, cock the hammer and pull the trigger.
Is that what a single action means?
Yes.
So you have to cock the hammer before you pull the trigger?
Yes.
Okay. Is this different from other Pietta single action revolvers?
It's different on outside because the details are different. We are not used to make any marks on the grip, or we are not used to write the caliber on the trigger guard. But this is basically is the same gun with a different configuration.
So are the internal components of this gun the same as for others,
Yes, correct.
Pietta?
Correct.
Are the internal components of this particular gun, are they interchangeable with other Pietta single action revolvers?
Yes, they do.
Now, is the hammer to this Exhibit 50 that we see in front of us, is that different from other Pietta revolver hammers?
As the sides of the hammer and being polished just to create a different color.
Okay. But is it similar in as far as specifications?
It's the same.
It's the same to other firearms? I'm going to show you what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 6. If I can have the deputy bring it up and ask you to
Yeah,
put on
sure.
some gloves.
Sure.
So you can,
Yeah. No, I don't.
he has it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
There's a pair of scissors there.
Sure.
I don't know why they insist on doing that when the weapon's already been processed. I guess in case they have to go back and look at something.
If you can open the box, Mr. Pietta. Do you recognize what's in there?
Yeah. It seems to be the same gun that's on the screen.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51.
No objection.
I move into evidence 51, Your Honor, with no objection.
Page 51 is submitted, you may publish.
Now, if you can take a look at that firearm Exhibit 6 that's in front of you, does it have a serial number?
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to put on the screen State's Exhibit 51. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, that's our invoice that probably has been used to ship the gun to EMF.
Does this invoice contain or list this particular gun that's in front of you, Exhibit 6?
Can I check the serial number?
Yes, please.
Can I touch the gun?
Yes, with your gloves.
Yeah, it's the same serial number.
Okay. So did Pietta Firearms then ship this gun, Exhibit 6, per this invoice?
Yes, we did.
And when and to whom was it shipped?
It's been shipped to EMF company. That is one of our customer that show with us during SHOT Show. So to get the gun inside United States, we need to get someone can get all the license to import the gun for us. That's why this sample has been shipped to EMF.
Okay. What kind of a company is EMF?
EMF is an importing company, and they sell to distributor, dealers, and to individuals.
Is EMF associated with Pietta Firearms?
Yes, it is.
How?
We, Alberto and myself, own EMF.
So you own EMF?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so when did you ship this particular firearm that's in front of you to EMF?
It's written on the invoice at the 27 November 2017.
So that's when it left Italy to go to EMF?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me go back to ask you a question about this hammer. You had said that it's nickel plated because this was for a particular.
No, it's not nickel plated, it's just polished.
Oh, polished, I'm sorry. Does that change its functionality?
No.
Okay. Did this particular gun go to the proof house?
Absolutely.
And was it approved by the proof house?
Yes, it is.
And how can you tell?
Well, there are some marks on the frame that is clearly on the top of the serial number. So you can see them. There's also another proof mark on the cylinder. So they're easy to understand that this gun has been proved by the proof house.
And what does that mean to you as a gun manufacturer that's been approved by the proof house?
That we have produced a good gun, follow the CIP regulation, and the gun can be sold to anyone. Without that marks, we cannot sell or produce or export any guns.
Now, once it comes to the United States, do you know if your guns or these guns that you import are also subjected to testing by American agencies?
No, actually, all the guns that want to be imported in United States need to be approved by ATF first. So when we start producing this single action revolver, we send a sample or few samples to ATF agent and they approve the gun for us.
Do you know what ATF does in order to approve the guns?
Mostly they have a schedule with details, so they need to check if our guns, actually a gun, match their requests. And also they call drop test that is used to see if the gun is safe enough to avoid any kind of malfunction.
Accidental.
You said a drop test. What do you understand that to be?
Drop test means that the gun has to be approved. They have a safety, and in this particular gun, the safety is on the cylinder, and they put the safety on. They put a primer, not a light brown, of course, a dummy. They put the hammer in the first notch, so the firing pin is lined with the primer, and they take a weight, let it drop at 8 or 4 feet, something like that, 5 times. And again, the system should not shoot. If that is okay, they approve the gun.
And so does your Pietta firearm revolvers get put through that test by ATF?
Absolutely.
And that's to test to make sure it doesn't fire on its own?
No, that test means that we have safety on the gun.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
What that mean?
Well, what does it take to
You need to
make
pull,
it shoot?
you need to cock the hammer and pull the trigger.
Do you know this gun that you have in front of you will fire without a pull of the trigger?
Actually, this gun cannot fire because from what I see is missing some parts. So,
Okay, I'm talking about when it was first
oh, sure, of
manufactured.
course.
Does it fire? Would it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No,
Why not?
because the mechanic, the design of the hammer and the trigger has been designed since Samuel Colt made this gun to work in that way.
And can you explain under what circumstances it will only fire?
Well, when you cock the hammer, the trigger will engage the firing knock position. That is the farthest one, so the last position of the hammer. And if you want to release the hammer, you need to pull the trigger. The trigger is just a sear that locks the hammer in that position. And if you want to do that, you need to pull the trigger.
Okay. Now, is there also a manufacturer's warning about whether or not the firing pin should be sitting on a primer?
Well, actually, it's not just a manufacturer, it's a standard rule between shooter when you carry your gun, in this particular gun, to load just only 5 ammo and not 6.
Why is that?
For safety reason. So you will know that you will not, if eventually the gun falls down, nothing happens.
What could happen if the gun falls down and the primer's...
Most of the time, nothing, because the hammer is against the frame. And so if you hit the round, the primer will not shoot the primer. So it's just a safety rule that has been taught to every kind of shooter. So I've been a shooter for myself, and that's what they told me to do. So load 5 rounds on the cylinder instead of 6.
And will it fire? Let's say you load 6. And what could happen if you load 6?
Nothing really, just need to know that you load 6 rounds instead of 5.
Okay, but if you have the firing pin on the 6th round?
If the firing pin is in the rest position when the hammer is down the frame, so the firing pin is not against the primer, nothing happens, because if you want to shoot the primer, you need to apply a certain quantity of force to shoot it. So you can get a thick touch on the primer, but the gun will not shoot.
Okay. If the firing pin is actually on the primer?
Close to.
Okay, but you had said that if the firing pin is on the primer and you drop the gun, what could happen?
Usually, it's based on the primer technology. The powder in the primer is not at the top of the primer, it's just a little in the middle. So you need to press it a little more. And when you reach that point, you can shoot the load under the firing pin.
So what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like the only way you can fire this gun is by pulling the trigger?
That's the way that should be done.
Is there another way to
No.
fire this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Let me ask you, what condition was this gun in when you shipped it, when Pietta shipped it to EMF?
As I said before, this gun has been produced for a trade show. So we ship the gun without the firing pin. That is mandatory for this trade show, that all the guns are safe. And doing that, there are inspectors that check all the guns for us and put a tag. So the consumer, the customers, will know that they cannot use the gun to shoot to anybody.
So not having a firing pin in that gun while it was used in trade shows, does that alter it or change it in any way?
Well, you are missing one part. That's it.
But does it change any internal components of it?
No.
Now, did Pietta Firearms own EMF while, during the time EMF owned this gun?
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did EMF do anything to this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Just a couple more questions, Mr. Pietta. When Pietta Firearms shipped this to the United States to EMF, did it send the firing pins with it?
I don't remember. Really. Sorry.
How hard is it to install a firing pin?
Pretty easy. It's just a pin and that's it.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, but the
Sure.
other lawyers will.
Thank you.
Oh, now we're going to hear from a different lawyer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Pietta.
Good afternoon.
Just have a couple of questions for you. We'll be out of here quickly. We heard you say that you personally made this gun. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was shipped from your company, Pietta, in 2017?
Yeah, that's what is written on the invoice.
Between 2017 and October 2021, you don't know how this gun was handled by any particular individuals. Is that correct?
No, I have no idea.
Your knowledge of the gun's functionality was limited to November of 2017 when it was shipped from your company. Is that fair?
That's not correct because my knowledge about this gun was also during this trade show that's been held in January. So probably the last time I saw the gun was in January.
So roughly beginning of 2018. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And so you don't know what condition the gun was in on October 21st, 2021, when it was being used on the Rust set by Mr. Baldwin. Is that correct?
Correct.
And before the gun was sent to the FBI for testing in 2022, you were not asked to inspect the gun. Is that right?
Correct.
And in fact, the Santa Fe sheriff didn't ask you any questions about the gun at that time.
No.
Isn't that right?
Correct.
Or at any time,
I never see anyone except today.
even though you personally made it. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And so the first time that you had seen the gun since about early 2018 was about 2 months ago. Isn't that right?
I saw the picture of the gun during a preview interview that we got on Zoom, in a Zoom meeting.
Someone held up a picture of the gun on a Zoom meeting,
Yeah, this picture probably.
and that was the first time since 2017 you had seen the gun. Yes.
Well, of course, I got this picture on my computer, but I never recall that was the one that was sent to everybody else.
And at that point, the gun was already broken. Correct, sir?
It's the first time I see the gun. I may say yes.
Great. Thank you. No further questions.
Those were actually good questions.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you so much.
But it was built with safety features in mind. Those don't just go away, in my humble biased opinion. In my humble, very biased.
Who's your next witness?
Your Honor, the state calls Justin Neal.
All right.
I know she's in the hospital, so I'm just gonna.
Okay.
Face the judge, raise your right hand. Please.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat, talk into the microphone.
Did they take the gun?
Yes.
Okay, I need it. Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor? Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yeah, my name is Justin Neal.
And sir, how are you employed?
I own my own marketing firm.
And what kind of work do you do? What kind of marketing work?
My marketing firm is a very stereotypical ad agency, and we have another leg to our company where we recruit and manage sales reps for our clients,
What kind of clients do you have?
primarily outdoors.
And are you affiliated with Pietta Firearms?
Yes.
How?
Pietta's a little bit more robust than the other clients I have. I essentially handle North America for them as it pertains to sales and marketing. And I also handle EMF, which they are part of, as their sales and marketing person.
What is EMF?
Early Modern Firearms is an importer, and it's based out of Santa Ana, California. They have been in business for 65 plus years, and very much back in the day, they used to supply a lot of firearms, Pietta and otherwise, to Hollywood.
Who owns EMF at this time?
Alessandro and Alberto Pietta.
And how long have they owned EMF?
I believe 2017.
And what exactly is it that you do for EMF?
I handle, again, the sales of the guns that they have of Pietta's. EMF only imports and distributes meaning sells to retailers, Pietta Firearms. So I handle the sales of Pietta Firearms through EMF through distribution.
Are you required to have a federal firearms license?
I am.
And why is that?
I am an RP on the FFL for EMF. There has to be two responsible parties, and the Pietta family or the Piettas entrusted in me to be one of the RPs on that FFL.
And RP is what?
Responsible party.
And what does the responsible party do?
The responsible party is responsible for the distribution, the importing of the firearms, and all the paperwork thereof.
So as the responsible party for EMF, are you also required to be aware of what transactions take place, what firearms are sold by EMF?
Yes.
Are you familiar with how EMF maintains its records of sales?
Yes.
In September of 2021, do you recall a transaction between EMF and a company called PDQ Arms and Prop?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recall that?
I recall that because I saw the actual sales record or the shipping invoice and the packing slip.
I'm going to show you, well, let me ask you this. How did PDQ contact you, or how is it that you guys learned that PDQ needed to purchase arms?
Yeah, they contacted EMF.
Okay. And what was the request for?
The request was for firearms that he saw on the website. EMF obviously has a website, and he wanted some revolvers. And at that time, 2021 was the heart of the pandemic, and Pietta and every gun manufacturer was back ordered. So we didn't have any. The lady in which he talked to initially said, we do have display guns that we show at trade shows. And so we said we had those guns.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 52.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2:00 in the morning here.
No objection.
Your Honor, the state would move into evidence 52.
States 52 is admitted and may publish.
I'm going to show you, well, before you is States Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
I recognize it, yes.
What is it?
It is a Pietta single action revolver.
And how do you recognize that is a Pietta single action revolver?
Because that was a display gun that we had at some of the trade shows in which I attended and I monitored.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as States Exhibit 6 and ask you to put on some gloves and take a look at that gun.
Okay.
Well, this is interesting. It was a display gun. It didn't do a lot of other things between the time that it was manufactured and PDQ bought it. Now, how many productions did PDQ use the gun in? If it was only rust, that goes out the window. That was in pretty prime condition. This is interesting.
Yes, please. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 6?
Yes,
What is it?
it is the same gun that's shown on screen, a Pietta single action revolver.
So it's the same gun as depicted on 52? State's Exhibit 52?
Yes,
And tell me, was this one of the guns that was sold to PDQ?
yes,
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's. Keep that in front of you because I may ask you some additional questions. If you can just close the box, but I will ask you some additional questions. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 53.
No objection.
Would move into evidence State's Exhibit 53.
States 53 is admitted.
Mr. Neal, do you recognize what's in front of you as State's Exhibit 53?
yes.
What is it?
It is a shipping report, and that is shipping invoice
From whom to whom?
from EMF to PDQ.
And when was that?
It was in 21, order date 9/29/21.
Okay. So on September 29, 2021, were these firearms that are listed on this invoice shipped to PDQ?
Yes,
And is Exhibit 6 that's in front of you one of those firearms that's on this invoice?
yes.
Which one is it? You can actually touch the screen and it'll mark.
Oh, well, okay. I'd have to see the serial number.
Okay, so
On the
if you want to
gun.
look at the serial number of the gun in Exhibit 6. Actually, if you want to open it and you can check the serial number.
Mr. Pietta had no trouble.
Yeah, it's right here.
Is it not making a mark? It might be your
It's
gloves.
it's the third one. I got gloves on.
Okay,
It's the third one.
so,
E52277.
this one right here?
Yes,
So the number 3, the third gun on the invoice
California.
is Exhibit 6.
yes.
Now, let me ask you, when did you become affiliated with EMF?
2018.
And do you recall approximately, was it beginning, mid, end of 2018?
And
And when you became affiliated with EMF, did EMF already have Exhibit 6 in its inventory?
yes,
And did this gun, Exhibit 6, remain with EMF from the time that you were with them until September 29, 2021?
yes.
And what did EMF use Exhibit 6, this particular gun, for?
To display at primarily industry trade shows, business to business shows, B2B shows.
So it was owned by the company the entire time?
Yes,
Did EMF do any work on this gun?
no,
Did EMF inspect it for quality assurance purposes?
before each show, functionality. It wasn't, they didn't take apart the gun or anything, just to make sure it functioned properly. And then they would put it in what we call a sock, which is basically a soft case.
And when you say functionality, what does that mean?
That the gun works properly, not firing it, never fired, just the 4 traditional click of a Colt firearm and the trigger work properly.
And the spin of the revolver.
And at any point during 2018 to September of 2021, was there any indication that this gun malfunctioned or had any defects?
No.
What condition was it in when it was sold to PDQ on September 29, 2021?
It was in perfect condition as far as I know.
Just minus the pin.
You said that how often was this gun checked for functionality while it was owned by EMF?
We do approximately 5 shows a year, and so at least 5 times.
And you say 5 shows, does that mean, is it in a display case? Or?
It is in a locked glass display case.
So people can't just come and grab it?
They can't grab it, no.
Do you also, well, let me ask you this before we move on to the next topic.
I'm wondering if this isn't Helena Hutchinson's mom. She looks familiar to me, and I wonder if that isn't her. But I'm not sure. It could be one of Baldwin's relatives.
When this gun was shipped to PDQ, do you know what it was shipped in?
Yeah, EMF follows standard operating procedures, which they do for any gun shipped, whether it's to a dealer, a big box store, distributor, influencer. It is in Pietta makes and supplies EMF with a very hard styrofoam box that's molded for single action, and it's placed in there, then a cover over the top of it that's fit to it, and then another cardboard box sleeve that slides over the top of that, sealed, and then it is put into another shipping box with whatever other guns or accessories the attended person or store requests.
Would that have been the manner in which it would have been shipped to PDQ?
Yes.
Do you also handle customer service calls for Pietta guns in the United States?
I handle quite a bit of the customer service calls, yes. Not all, but a lot.
Approximately how many would you say?
Over the years, since 2018, I probably on average handle 5 or 6 a month.
Okay. Have you ever received a complaint or a call about a Pietta revolver going off by itself?
Never.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
Am I familiar with how it fires?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Does it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No.
May I have a moment here?
Yes, I'm here, Councilor Frum.
I believe they got another question from the jury. I don't want to say.
Mr. Neal, if this particular gun, Exhibit 6, if it had displayed any defects in functionality, would it have still been shown at trade shows?
No.
Why not?
The purpose of Pietta or EMF going to a trade show is to sell firearms to FFL dealers, holders, not the public, but sporting goods stores, if you will. And if a buyer who wanted to specifically see this gun or any other was to hold it under our watchful eye, of course, and it was defective, he would probably not buy that gun or any other gun that we have.
So would it be fair to say you put the best of the best that Pietta has to offer?
Absolutely.
May I have a moment here? Does the court want this one?
Oh, that was a question from the jury.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
We have no questions from this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. You're excused, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Next witness.
Give me just a minute, we're just a little out of order. Give us just one moment.
Sure.
Oh, I've seen her buzzing around.
Missing my notes.
Okay.
Well, I missed that, whatever that was.
Give me just a moment, I'm missing my notes.
Okay.
She's honest. Wonder what they're grinning about. About 50 minutes.
Found it. The state calls Corporal Alexandria Hancock.
Yeah, I had seen her buzzing around.
Ladies and gentlemen, raise your right hand, please.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat, Captain.
Is she a crime scene tech too, or what is she?
Just state your name for the record, even though I know it's repetitive.
Alexandria Hancock.
And how are you currently employed?
I am a corporal with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department?
It will be 7 years in November.
And how did you become involved with this case?
In 2021, I was a detective with the Sheriff's Office. I was assigned to the Violent Crimes Division. On that day, we had received a call for a shooting at a movie set on the Bonanza Creek Ranch.
And you said you were on duty, and I'm sorry if I didn't hear you. What were you at the time? Were you a corporal?
No, I was a detective.
And did you show up to the scene there at Bonanza Creek Ranch?
Yes.
Do you know approximately what time?
I believe it was between 2:30 and 3 p.m.
And so can you kind of give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury an idea of what was going on? Were you the only detective on scene? Were there other detectives? What was happening?
Yeah, so when we had originally, it's called a briefing, essentially, back at our office, at the Sheriff's Office, we had a short briefing with all the detectives that were there that day about what had been learned thus far as to what occurred on the ranch. And so after that briefing, the detectives were assigned at that point on
who would be handling and who would be assisting. And then from there, the entire team of us went out to the ranch.
So approximately how many people were in the team?
I want to say maybe 5 or 6 of us.
And how does the sheriff's department traditionally, is one detective named primary, or are there more than one? How does that work?
Just one is primary, and then typically they will have a secondary just depending on the case.
And how did it work out with this case?
Originally with this case, a different detective, his name's Joel Cano, was assigned the primary detective, and then I was assigned secondary.
And just so that we're clear, at some point did you become primary?
Yes.
And at what point was that?
Probably at least a couple weeks later.
Okay. Now, in that interim, in those 2 weeks, were you actively working on the case?
Yeah, I was assisting with it.
And as the assisting detective, did you conduct interviews with witnesses on October 21st?
Yes, I did.
Who did you interview on that day? And then we'll back up.
Okay. On that day, I interviewed Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, David Halls, and Alec Baldwin.
So I want to be clear. You, as the assisting detective, interviewed all 3 of the people that were ultimately criminally charged.
Yes.
So if you were interviewing all of those, what I'm going to call sort of main players, what was the primary Detective Cano doing?
He was, on the day of the incident, he was interviewing the numerous people that needed to be interviewed back at the ranch.
And give us an idea of who those folks were.
Who else was there?
Sorry, that Detective Cano interviewed?
Mm-hmm.
They were people that were said to be inside the church at the time of the incident, or members that assisted with the armor.
Why was it necessary to have 2 detectives doing interviews at the same time?
Because of how many people were involved.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And have you continued to be the primary investigator with the Sheriff's Department on this case since 2 weeks after the incident?
Yes.
Now, when you were dispatched, well, it sounds like you weren't really dispatched, were you?
No.
Excuse me.
Who called you in?
My lieutenant at the time, which was Mike Martinez.
And you indicated that you had a briefing.
Yes.
And tell us kind of what information you got at the briefing that you had before you went out to the scene.
Yeah, so during our briefing there at the office, we were told that there's a movie being filmed at Bonanza Creek Ranch, and then sometime during that day, shortly before we were called in for that briefing, that 2 people had been shot on the set.
Did you receive information that the shooting had been characterized as an accident?
I do recall reading that on our CAD.
And as a detective with the Sheriff's Department, when you get called to a shooting that's being characterized as an accident, does that mean to you that there will be no criminal charges?
No.
Have you been dispatched or involved in accident investigations in the past that turned into criminal cases?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear. I know that the jury's heard some of this. So you interviewed Hannah Gutierrez, correct?
That's correct.
And what role did she have on the set?
She was the armorer, the main armorer on Rust.
And you also indicated that you interviewed someone named David Halls. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall what his role was on the set?
He was the assistant director.
And then, of course, you interviewed Mr. Baldwin, and we understand that he's an actor, correct?
Correct.
I want to just take you back for a moment. During opening, did you hear the defense attorney say that Sarah Zachary was not interviewed on October 21st?
I did hear that.
Is that correct?
No.
Was Sarah Zachary actually interviewed on October 21st?
She was.
Who interviewed her?
Detective Joel Kano with the assistance of Detective Ray Arndt.
And who was Sarah Zachary?
She was the props master for Rust.
If you would try to explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the relationship between the prop master and the armorer based on your understanding.
What I understood between the prop master and the armorer, as it pertains to Rust, is that they're technically two different departments. They have different functions, different roles, do different things. But in the case of Rust, the prop master and the armorer assisted each other because of what they would describe to be prop heavy this movie was.
And did you get an understanding of, when we say prop, exactly what we're talking about?
Yes.
So one of these gun holsters, would that be a prop?
Yes.
Would the guns themselves be props?
Yes.
Even the live gun, the real guns, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
And the ammunition, would that be considered a prop?
Yes.
Okay. And does that also include glasses and cups and plates and silverware?
Yeah, anything that an actor would use in a scene, excluding like wardrobe items.
Okay. And I understand that you indicated that Ms. Zachary was interviewed on the 21st of October by Detective Kano. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with Sarah Zachary at a later date?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall approximately when that was?
I believe it was sometime in November.
So just the following month?
Yes.
And you testified that you conducted an interview with Hannah Gutierrez on October 21st. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with her at a later date?
Yes, I did.
And approximately when was that, if you recall?
I want to say that was in November as well.
And you interviewed Mr. Baldwin on the 21st, correct?
Yes.
And did you have subsequent contact with Mr. Baldwin after the interview that you did on October 21st?
Yes, I did.
And how were you having contact with him? Was he in New Mexico, or how was that happening?
No, he wasn't in New Mexico at that point, but I would receive phone calls and sometimes text messages.
From Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Generally speaking, was it Mr. Baldwin reaching out to you or you reaching out to him?
It was him reaching out to me.
So he had your cell phone number?
Yes, my department cell.
And just to be clear, do the defense attorneys also have your contact information?
They do.
Have they sent you text messages?
I don't know exactly her title, but members from their team, yes.
Okay, so they actually have your cell phone number?
Yes.
And you've made yourself available to them?
That's correct.
And you do that whether I'm there or not, right?
Yes.
With regard to your November interview with Ms. Gutierrez, did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez about who loaded the gun?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That she loaded the gun herself.
And did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez concerning the box of ammunition that was holding that one suspected live round?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That it would be a box that she would have provided.
Objection hearsay unless this is information acted upon.
So my response, unless you want us to approach, is that these are statements against interest and they come in under that exception.
I don't believe that they are, but like I said, if it's information acted upon and we can cross on it, it's fine.
All right, go ahead.
Did you have conversations? Well, let me ask you. Ms. Gutierrez indicated that she brought that box of ammunition on the set. Is that right?
That it was similar to one that she would have provided.
During that interview, did she produce a photograph for you?
She did.
And the photograph that she produced, did she tell you where she got it?
I don't know if she said in that interview exactly where she got it, but she did describe it to be a box like that was in the photo would be what she provided.
And the photograph that she showed you during the interview, did it match exactly the label on the box that contained the live ammunition?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have any question about who introduced the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No.
Who do you believe it was based on your investigation?
Hannah.
Did you have conversations with Ms. Gutierrez about her firearms training?
The one that she conducted?
Yes,
or her own experience?
No.
Objection hearsay.
I think we should approach. You not want to?
Oh, go ahead. Come on up.
Figures I step away because Doggy had to go out. I hope this wasn't on too long. But then I haven't been speeding things up. Let's do it 10 seconds at a time. Why is it not doing it? It doesn't make sense.
No.
Let me
as well as
what's
I missed a lot.
I don't know.
Interview
was there
With
shortly.
And
Okay.
Baldwin, is that correct?
Yes.
Nope. Yep. Nope.
You conducted an interview with Mr. Baldwin, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you learn during that interview whether or not Mr. Baldwin received any training regarding the use of these firearms?
Yeah, he had mentioned that he did a training session
With who?
shortly after with he said Hannah, which was the armorer, and then I believe he said Sarah and their assistant Nicole was there.
Okay. And did you interview Seth Kinney?
Yes, several times.
How many times do you think you talked to him?
I don't know if I could. I'm not sure I could put a number on it. I don't know, probably at least between 5 and 10.
Okay. And was Mr. Kinney cooperative with you?
Yes.
Did you request any search warrants in this case?
Yes.
What search warrants were requested?
I had drafted the search warrant for the prop truck as well as the search warrant for PDQ.
And PDQ, is that Mr. Kinney's business?
Yes.
Let me ask you, have you ever worked on a movie set before?
No.
And have you ever investigated a crime on a movie set before?
No.
On October 21st, 2021, did you know what a prop truck was?
No.
At some point through your investigation, did you learn what a prop truck was?
Yes.
And what's a prop truck?
It was an area that was used for storage.
Storage of?
This particular prop truck?
Yeah.
It was actually multiple departments that were using it. I don't know exactly which ones, but the armorer and the props department had approximately half of like the back of the truck.
And I think we heard previous testimony from Ms. Poppell that the search of the prop truck didn't happen until the 27th of October, I think.
Yes.
Is that right? What was the delay?
Well, I was not the case agent at that time, and so I really wasn't the one in charge of the investigation. And so what happens with your case agent is they kind of develop the flow and decide what's needed based on the information that they have and what we need to get.
What was one of the first things that you did when you became the primary on this case?
Started reviewing a lot of information.
How long after you became primary did you request a warrant for the prop truck?
Well, I wasn't the primary at the time that I requested that warrant. I was assisting.
Okay.
And so, I mean, between the day that the incident occurred, which was the 21st, and then the day that the search warrant was, I think, applied and executed for was the 27th, so 6 days.
And was the prop truck secured during that time?
Through my interviews, I found out that it was secured.
And how was it secured?
So the set, one of the individuals that worked on the set of Rust.
Objection, you're set. You were just right. Unless she knew it at the time.
This is information that she learned during her investigation.
But afterwards, it has nothing to do with.
Ask her when, did you get that date?
In terms of when she learned?
Yes.
When did you learn? Let me ask you this. When you showed up on the 27th of October, did anyone meet you at the prop truck?
Yes, and then we also had deputies that went out there at least a couple days before we had drafted that search warrant to secure the truck with 24-hour surveillance.
So when you went to the prop truck on the 27th, did someone have to meet you there to open it?
Yes.
Who had to meet you there to open it?
Her name was Rue Walters.
Okay. So on that day, did you understand that it was locked?
Yeah, inaccessible.
Okay, because she had to open it for you.
Correct.
And other than props generally, tell us what other things were stored inside that truck.
There was a firearm safe with firearms in it. There were firearms outside of that safe. I think there were like a bunch of chairs in it and maybe some like shade tents and stuff like that. There was quite a bit of stuff.
After you were let into the prop truck and it was unlocked for you, describe for us the safe. How big is it?
Maybe about 4 feet tall and maybe about a foot wide.
And did someone have to come and unlock that safe for you?
Yes.
Who was that?
Seth Kenny.
And when you executed the warrant on the prop truck, as it relates to this case, just summarize for us what you found. I mean, you know, we don't care about tables and chairs and stuff.
Additional firearms, more ammunition. I think that was kind of the major things that we got off of it.
Excuse me. I drank too fast.
And are you familiar with the ammunition that was provided to the set of Rust by Seth Kinney?
Yes.
Where was that ammunition found?
Inside of the prop truck in a bag.
And when you say in a bag, was it inside something else?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Was it just loose in a bag?
Well, it was inside of a box that was inside a duffel bag type thing.
Okay. And is it also, did you locate a black gun belt?
I don't think I was the one that located that.
Okay, all right, no problem. And we understand that you also executed a search warrant on PDQ, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was on November 30th, I think we heard?
Yes.
So prior to executing that search warrant, had Seth Kinney talked to you about live rounds?
I don't, yes, I believe so.
Do you recall, did Seth Kinney at some point bring live rounds to you?
He did.
Do you know whether that was before you searched PDQ?
It was before.
So you knew before you searched PDQ that he had live rounds because he took them and told you?
Yes.
Did you receive information prior to the search at PDQ regarding a green ammo can?
I did.
Who did you receive that information from?
From Thel Reed, which was Hannah's father.
That's not me, Bingen. I don't know where it's coming from.
In part, was it based on the information from Hannah's father that you executed the search warrant on PDQ?
Yeah, the information I learned from him was some of what I used.
And just to be clear, I want to be clear, the reason that you went and searched PDQ, one of the reasons is because Mr. Reed said Seth Kinney's got live ammunition, right?
Yeah, he did say that. He actually said that he was the one that picked up that live ammunition.
Who was?
Thel.
Thel picked it up?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Corporal, did it occur to you that Thel Reed may be giving you inaccurate information to protect his daughter?
Objection.
But, I mean, unless we're going to be able to ask witnesses, never.
Continue.
I'm just asking you, I'm not asking about anybody else. Did it occur to you when you took the information from Mr. Reed and got the search warrant, did you know who to believe at that point in time?
No.
Okay. And I want to be clear, did Mr. Reed, and this is just why you did what you did Mr. Reed indicate to you that the ammunition at PDQ he thought was the same ammunition on the set of Rust?
Yes.
Did that turn out to be true?
No.
Even though, well, let me ask you this, the live ammunition that was collected from PDQ, did it just visibly look dissimilar to the live ammunition from Rust?
Yes.
Even though it looked dissimilar, did you send it to the FBI for testing anyway?
We did.
Did you ever discover any evidence throughout your entire investigation that Seth Kinney supplied live rounds to the set of Rust?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Seth Kinney was present on the set of Rust until you met him at the prop truck?
No.
During your investigation, did you ever discover any evidence that Mr. Kinney modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Ms. Gutierrez modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever formally arrest Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not she was ultimately convicted of a crime?
No.
Did you ever arrest Dave Halls?
No.
Do you know whether or not he was convicted of a crime at some point?
Yes, he was.
And the fact that you arrested him or didn't arrest him, did that have anything to do with it?
No.
As a law enforcement officer, do you always arrest people who then later are criminally charged?
Sorry, you mean like arrest them right away? And
Do they have to be arrested in order to be criminally charged?
No.
Why would you not arrest someone?
To develop the investigation, if we're still waiting or investigating facts, trying to find information, and to get potential suspects or witnesses, whoever is involved, to cooperate with law enforcement.
Who makes the final charging decision in a criminal case?
The district attorney's office, essentially.
The prosecutor does, right?
Yes.
You guys don't. The law enforcement officers don't, correct?
Right.
Now, in addition to searching the prop truck and searching PDQ, did you also ask to search cell phones?
I did.
And whose cell phones did you search or ask to be searched?
I requested searches of Alec Baldwin's cell phone, Hannah Gutierrez's, David Hall's, and Sarah Zachary.
Did you review all of those cell phone extractions?
I did.
And when you review the cell phone extraction, what do you get to see? Do you get to see text messages?
I do.
Do you get to see photographs?
Yes.
When you reviewed the photographs from Ms. Gutierrez's cell phone, did you notice anything that stood out to you?
I did.
What was that?
There was a photograph taken, I believe it was maybe end of November, that she was there was two bullets, 2 rounds, in I believe her hand. And it caused a little bit of concern. And then I think I actually had found a couple photos of it, and one of the bullets in that photograph was circled, kind of how you can edit a picture, and it said, I believe it was dud on top of it.
That bullet that was circled that said dud on it, was it a Starline brass casing?
It was.
Did it have a nickel primer?
Yes. Well, silver.
Silver, nickel.
Yeah.
Okay. Just in terms of the color.
Yes.
And in terms of the projectile shape, did it match the live rounds from the set of rest?
It did.
All right, counsel, we're going to stop for the day. Jury, I want you to, instead of 8:30, I want you to be here at 9:30 downstairs. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
Okay, you heard me with my doggy. Got to mute my mic.
Oh, did you see that? Oh, it's an exhibit. She's having. Oh, exhibits.
So that was quick. I thought I had more time.
We're not dismissed for the day. We're not dismissed for the day. While I'm taking a break, I want you all to get your exhibits over here.
Because you mean everything. Okay.
You should lock up for the day. I'll be back with that. Okay?
Please. Comment technically.
She's telling them to get their it together with exhibits and stuff. I don't know what I meant.
Okay, fine.
Because I've now figured out what we're dealing with.
All right. So, I told the jury to come back at 9:30. I want to be on time when they get here. So I want you all to get settled and be prepared to have the case called and begin to argue the motion at 8:45.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And when you're finished with that, send it to me as well. Not just defense at 7:30 p.m. or whatever.
Oh, yes, sir.
Mhm.
Just a couple housekeeping issues, or at least one is, can there just be an instruction that the witness who's under oath cannot be spoken to by prosecutors?
Yes.
No problem.
Oh, I can't see you. Okay.
I can't imagine she wants to speak
Yes.
to me. But
You're under oath. Don't talk to any witnesses. All right. Anything else?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're in recess.
Okay. I thought there was more time going on. But I had to go bring my doggy in. And I thought I had muted I'm having more problems with my mic. And I thought I had muted it. And I looked back at it a second time and I thought it was muted. And guess what? It wasn't muted. So you might have heard me say what a good girl my doggy is. You might have heard me calling for her. So I apologize for, again, another error with the microphone. I'm double checking to make sure I'm not muted right now. All right. Well, that was a lot. That was jam-packed into the tail end of this, once we got past witness number 4, Marissa Poppell. Poppell. Prosecution is doing a lot of, we know what the defense is saying, and they're not going to get away with it. And this is why. Because they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Baldwin acted recklessly. And his excuse of what happened, it was a faulty gun. It'll be interesting to see, once PDQ obtains it, the prop house obtains that particular weapon, where else did it go? And they obtained it in September of 2021. Wasn't the incident in October of 2021? Didn't PDQ buy it specifically for Rust? Let me check my dates here. October 21st, 2021 is the date of the incident. Also the date that the camera crew walked out due to too many safety breaches. They walked out in the morning, and after the lunch break, if I've got it correctly, is when this happened. Who was one of the producers of this production? Who was the one that held the weapon? You can do all the dancing you want to, defense team, but the facts remain. So we'll see what the real jury has to say once it gets to them, which might be a week from tomorrow. So we'll see what day 3 brings. And until then, take care and God bless.